So the next chapter of the thesis we're going to go over covers babies age 4 to 12 weeks. And this is still an age where they are so absorbing their environment. So their eyes are their primary way of taking in the world. And I really loved what they said. Until about the 5th month, babies use their eyes as the primary source for information about the world and how it works. So they're loving looking at your face, and they're loving looking at high contrast images. They're really still craving all of that visual stimulation. And really, this is when that time peaks. So you almost can't give your baby enough of the high contrast images. So I remember doing a lot of moving from the simple to this age, moving to the complex. So we would do images like this one and like this. And we had these images taped up everywhere, like near the changing table. We just used painter's tape. And we had a beautiful black and white mobile that I remember that I gotten off of Etsy. And we've designed this one at Lovevery. And there's something really magical about baby being able to look at something that's slowly moving for visual tracking. So I remember my baby staring at a mobile like this for like 20 minutes, even more at a time, because it's really mesmerizing and important for their brains to be looking at these high contrast images. So there's a lot of activities on finding all these black and white images. There's some tips. So if they're staring at them for a while, keep letting them have this steady diet of black and white images. If they start to turn away and if they start to get fussy or not show interest, then obviously stop. Another thing is that they put in the thesis are these like using black and white letters and outlines of numbers and like maybe even things for their environment. They talk about creating silhouettes of meaningful items. You know, honestly, I felt kind of too nerdy doing that. I was like showing my baby these flashcards of like the letter A and number 1 through 10. And I just kind of abandoned it after a while because it's kind of embarrassing having those things around. But anyway, it was interesting. I don't really know the science of understanding, getting familiar with numbers and letters and those shapes and having that help children later on. So I think any kind of black and white high contrast images are helpful and valuable for your baby. They love to notice, as I said, moving objects. So this mobile is great because it naturally moves. See, I'm not like really moving, but the air is moving this mobile. They also love to visually track. So we talked about this before, but you can take these more complex images and see if your baby's eyes will track. And then also see if you can get your baby's head to turn. So their eyes will track, and that's one form of development. And then if they start to move their head, it can help release tension from their neck. It can help balance out, making sure they don't have any flat spots in their head. It can actually really start to promote that head turning. And you can do that with black and white images. Another piece, he also had some stuff about taking things apart, like taking the lampshade off of the lamp and showing how things how they're made up of holes and parts. I think I did do some of this, and it was kind of goofy. What I did do, which I loved, which is on the thesis on page 63, is I showed her I got balloons, like helium balloons, and then I got balloons that I would just blow up, and we would drop them. And so another exercise for visual tracking is to drop a balloon in space. So let's say your baby is like laying down and you just kind of drop this balloon. It's so fun. They're really, really trying to track that moving object because babies are naturally oriented towards tracking something that's moving versus something that's static. So that was really fun. Another thing is you can strike the balloon and see if you can make it move. There's also some fun balloon activities when they get a little bit older in this age range, they'll be able to start to bat. And so you can have a balloon in front of them and see if they will bat at the balloon and see if they can start to understand that their arm can actually strike an object and that object will move. So that was really fun. And then balloon kicking. So it wasn't in the thesis, but tying balloons to your baby's ankles at this age is so fun to promote kicking. So there's lots to do with the balloon. So that's moving objects. And then making noise. So your baby at this age has a bigger attunement to hearing, and they can start by the 8th week. Infants can distinguish different voices, tones, and qualities of statements. So you might notice that your baby, instead of reflexively noticing every sound in their environment, they're starting to make a decision about what they want to pay attention to. And so it's really fun to take them on a sound tour. And so you can be having them in a front-facing carrier and take out 2 spoons and knock them together, or open and close a cupboard or a door loudly. And if you're in a quiet home, these noise demonstrations can be so fun and engaging for your baby. You can rip a piece of paper. Again, you can bat the balloon and see what kind of noise it'll make. So he had talked about like clearing your throat, activating a blow dryer. That sounded a little wacky, but like pouring pasta in a pan, like as you're cooking, if you want to really slow down and see about all the noises that cooking makes and watch your baby just be mesmerized by these noises. They're all so new to them. If you really think about it, they've never heard a lot of these noises before. So they're really tuning in. They will also love music more, which is really fun. There's a ton to do on the gross motor side. So thinking about tummy time and head turning and side lying, and just to remember that the floor is the absolute best place for your baby to be. And we have a second video with Rachel Coley, who's a OT expert that can talk all about tummy time and rolling over and all those milestones that we also often wonder about. Recognizing their hands. This is really fun. So they're like swatting and batting, but they don't really understand that these hands are a part of them yet. And so Dr. Staso talked about putting some black and white mittens that they can understand that their hands belong to them a little bit earlier than they might know naturally, by putting black and white mittens on their little hands. So they're looking for high contrast. They notice that these mittens are on their hands and they start to track them in a way, and they start to understand that those hands are moving because they belong to themselves. So some research has shown that if you cover your baby's hands with black and white checkered mittens at about 2 months of age, occasionally during the day, that she will notice her hands several weeks earlier than she might otherwise. So I remember reading this and just wondering about it. I thought it was really curious for hand recognition. So that's why we made these black and white mittens. Another fun thing to think about is the grasp reflex. So babies have a natural grasp reflex. That's why when you put your finger into their hand, they will grasp it so tightly. And you actually want to help them engage that grasp reflex to then later kind of move out of that that reflex and move into voluntary hand movements. So the more that you help your baby engage their grasp reflex, the theory is that the more that they can actually start to understand how their hands will voluntarily open and close. So it's just kind of also just sweet and fun to like have your baby hang on to your finger. So that's a really fun thing to do. And then speaking. So the more, what he said is that during the first 6 months, that infants are more likely to coo or babble and like add these consonant sounds in an eventual repetitive manner while another person is speaking to them. So they're also vocalized more often after they've been spoken to. So this is the chance to have a little conversation with your 8-week-old. It's so fun to see them coo back to you. And I remember if you give them the space, my baby making these vocalizations back to me, it was so amazing. I really did feel like we were having a conversation. So always can speak to them, but then give them some space to respond. I remember my patient husband was actually a little bit better at that than I was, but I remember really loving that interaction. So that back and forth can be great. And then always feel free to talk to your baby in that natural sing-songy voice, that motherese, if you will. It is that high-pitched, repetitive, kind of elongating vowels is actually really healthy for their language development. Their ears are naturally tuned in to hear you better and understand the lilts of language and the flow of language better when you're speaking naturally. So in review, it's still so much about their visual, their eyes developing. And so they're just going to be so hungry for black and white images. And then take them on little sound tours and talk to them a lot, and make sure to check out our video about tummy time and the gross motor activities that you can do with your baby at this age.